Hi, I'm Maureen. My mother kicked me out the night I refused to take the fall for my sister's $135,000 theft. No apology, no hesitation, just the front door and the rain waiting outside. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing it wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was a pattern, quiet, calculated, signed in my name, stolen behind my back. How does a family break you so gently you don't notice until you're already broken? Have you ever been the one expected to take the hit to protect everyone else? Have you ever had to choose between your truth and your place at the table? Are you listening to this alone tonight? Are you watching from a city that's made you feel invisible too? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what this story reminds you of. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. You're going to want to hear how this ends. I came home to silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses against your skin. Tight, watching, waiting. The kitchen light was on. My mother stood by the counter, arms folded, her expression already carved in disappointment. Uncle Ken sat stiffly at the table, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sit down," my mother said. I didn't ask why. I sat. I noticed the untouched coffee mugs, the slightly trembling hand Ken rested on the table. Something was off. My mother inhaled, slow and controlled, and then dropped the bomb. "Tamara's in trouble. Your uncle's money, $135,000, is missing." I didn't blink. I knew where this was going before she finished the next sentence. "We saw the footage, it's her. But she'll be ruined if this goes public. You don't have a record, Maureen. You're stable. You can take the hit for the family." I felt nothing at first. No spike of anger, no shock, just the clarity of a puzzle finally snapping into place. Of course this was happening. "No," I said. Not loud, not shaken, just final. The air shifted. My mother's tone cracked like glass. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," and that was it. Her voice went sharp, full of that cold, false calm people use before they say something cruel. "Then get out, right now." I didn't argue. I stood up and walked down the hall, packed what I could. It wasn't until I zipped my bag that I noticed the rain against the windows. Tacoma rain never felt heavy before. That night, it felt like weight. Before I could reach the front door, she beat me to it, tossing the rest of my things onto the porch. "I gave you everything," she hissed. "You took more," I said, and walked into the rain without looking back. The first night at Ria's apartment was quiet. No explanations, no therapy session over tea. She gave me the couch, a blanket, and space. It was exactly what I needed. I lay there, the sounds of the storm outside blending with the ache in my chest. Not because I was betrayed, because I wasn't surprised. That was the part that stung. 6 years ago, I applied for a mortgage on a condo in downtown Tacoma. It got denied. The reason? A delinquent credit card under my name, one I'd never opened. When I confronted my mother, she didn't even flinch. "It was to keep the lights on. God, Maureen, you act like I took your identity or something." "You did," I thought. "You took more than that." Back then, I let it slide. I let a lot slide, but not this time. Sitting on Ria's couch, still damp from the rain, I reached for my laptop, logged into my accounts. The list was long, bills I'd been covering for years. Things they never asked me to pay for because they assumed I just would. Rent, utilities, Tamara's college loans. Click, click, cancel, terminate. Let them figure it out. I stared at the glow of the screen, then out the rain-streaked window where Tacoma blurred in the streetlight glow. If they wanted to see what life without me looked like, they were about to. I woke up with a headache that felt like punishment. Maybe it was. The price of being silent for too long. The kind of ache that makes your thoughts come slower, as if they're weighed down with everything you didn't say the night before. The pharmacy wasn't far, just 3 blocks from Ria's apartment. I didn't brush my hair, didn't put on lipstick. I just walked. The air outside was damp and raw, the kind of spring cold that bites through sleeves and expectations. At the counter, I handed over my insurance card like I had a dozen times before. The tech scanned it, blinked, then typed again. "I'm sorry, you're not showing up as covered. Are you sure this is current?" I stood there for a second, unsure if I misheard. It should be, I said. It's under my mother's plan. Would you like me to call your provider? No, I whispered, already knowing. By the time I was back on the sidewalk, I had already dialed. The customer rep sounded too cheerful for the kind of conversation I was about to have. Looks like you were removed from this plan 23 months ago. No warning, no letter, just erased. I didn't speak for a beat too long. She repeated herself like I hadn't heard. Yeah, I said. I heard you. Thank you. Click. I walked home slower than I came. Rhea was still in her robe when I came in. Bad? You ever find out you've been living without a safety net and didn't even know it? She tilted her head. That sounds like a metaphor. It's not. We didn't talk more after that. She made tea. I sat at the table, staring into the steam. You remember that scholarship Tamara got from the church a few years ago? She asked, trying to change the subject. The word scholarship cracked something open. I remembered the ceremony, the applause, the pastor shaking Tamara's hand like she'd cured cancer. I remembered standing off to the side, confused why my name had been mentioned at all. Back then, I chalked it up to a misprint. Maybe someone on the committee made a clerical error. Now I knew better. I pulled out my laptop, dug through an old folder marked church papers. And there it was. A scanned PDF of the application. My name, my details, my signature. Except, I never signed it. The signature was close, but not mine. The R was wrong. The loop in the D was crooked. Tamara had stolen more than money. I remembered that Sunday service afterward. People patting her back, shaking my hand like I was the selfless big sister behind the scenes. Someone even handed me the camera. Take a picture of your sister. She deserves this moment. And I did. I didn't realize then I was photographing my own erasure. Back at the kitchen table, I opened a blank document and typed one word at the top, receipts. Then I started a list. Credit card fraud, Deborah. Health insurance cancellation, scholarship forgery. They thought I was the one with no proof, but I've always had a ledger. Rhea was scrolling through her phone on the couch, her leg draped lazily over the armrest, when she looked up and said it. You know the church folks are still whispering about that scholarship thing, right? I looked up from my tea, slightly startled. Still? They think someone's going to come forward eventually. Tamara's name pops up. Yours does too. I waved it off. People talk. But then she tilted her head. Did your mom ever confront her? I mean, once everything started unraveling? My breath caught before I could hide it. That question, so simple, landed like a nail driven through softened wood. No, I said too quickly. She didn't. And that's when the memory hit. The day after the church scholarship was awarded. Tamara's big moment. My mother had pulled me aside, not to celebrate, not even to say thank you. She whispered, "Let it go. You're older. You can absorb the hit." She wasn't confused. She wasn't denying it. She knew. She planned around it. I excused myself and went to the closet, digging through the plastic storage bin I hadn't touched in years. At the bottom, beneath old leases and faded tax returns, was the letter. Community Foundation of Pierce County, addressed to me. My name, my birth date, my social security number, and a signature I didn't write. The tail on the Y in Colby curled the wrong direction. Tamara always added a heart above her eyes. There was one here too, a subtle giveaway, a fingerprint of forgery. I sat there, paper in hand, remembering that Sunday morning. The choir sang. The pastor's voice cracked with pride as he called Tamara's name. Maureen Colby was printed on the check. They made me take the photo. She deserves this moment, my mother had said, smiling at me with the same mouth that later whispered lies. It wasn't just stolen money. It was stolen identity, stolen presence, stolen worth. I walked back into the living room. Rhea glanced up from her laptop, her face softening as she saw whatever expression I was wearing. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I think I'm starting to understand the rules of the game." We stayed up late that night. Rhea poured wine and we talked, really talked, about when it started, how things unfolded. At some point, I said it aloud for the first time. "I think my mom blames me for Dad leaving." Rhea didn't flinch. "Tell me." I stared at the window. Tacoma was quiet that night, except for the occasional whoosh of tires on wet streets. I was 14. He packed his things and slammed the door. She screamed after him, "Look what you've done." Not at him, at me. She meant it, I added quietly. She never took it back. No one ever corrected her? No one ever had to. Rhea put her glass down. "You've been apologizing for being born ever since." I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because she was right. It wasn't one moment. It was hundreds of them, each small, each justifiable, each embedded like glass under skin. And I'd learned to walk on them without limping. Later that night, I opened a new folder on my computer. Title, "For the Record." Inside, I uploaded the forged scholarship letter, a PDF of the canceled credit card statement, the screenshot from my insurance provider, an old email from my mother labeled, "Do not make this worse." If silence was what they demanded, they were not going to like what speaking looked like. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I stayed on the couch long after Rhea had gone to bed, the only light in the apartment spilling from the fridge left cracked open behind me. Somewhere between the silence and the hum of traffic outside, I found myself reaching for the box I hadn't touched in years. It was filled with pieces of an old life, scraps of paper, dried-out pens, a worn leather-bound journal I forgot I ever owned. I opened it to an entry I had written when I was 14. I saw him with her again. She had red nails. He touched her cheek like she was glass. I told Mom. She told me to shut my mouth. It hit me like a fist to the chest. I hadn't just watched my father walk out. I had watched my mother hold the door open for him, not because she wanted him gone, but because she didn't want me to say why. "You want to destroy this family?" she had snapped. "Then keep talking." I didn't talk. I let it rot inside me. I let him go. And somehow, I became the one to blame for the door closing behind him. I flipped another page, reading my own handwriting like it belonged to someone else. Scribbled margins, cramped sentences, words that screamed even when I couldn't. I learned early that silence keeps the roof over your head. But silence hadn't saved me. It had caged me. 16 years ago, I gave up on truth to keep the family intact. And now, that family had no room for me. I closed the journal and sat back, letting the weight of it all settle. Then another memory surfaced. Rhea. She had been loud, wild, brilliant. The kind of friend who pulled me out of my shell just enough to remember what light felt like. Until the day my mother intervened. "You don't need girls like that around," she had said. "She'll ruin your future." And like the obedient daughter I was taught to be, I cut Rhea off, sent her a text I didn't mean and never looked back. At the time, I told myself I was protecting my future, but now I knew better. What good was I even trying to protect? The next morning, I found Rhea in the kitchen stirring oatmeal like it was a ritual. I sat across from her, sliding the journal forward. "I should have told you years ago," I said. She didn't look surprised, just tired. "I figured it out when you disappeared. I was angry, yeah, but mostly I was sad." I told her about the affair, about the scholarship, about the way my mother weaponized shame and silence like a tradition passed down. "We were just kids trying to survive our mothers," Rhea said softly. That line stuck with me all day. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up the document I'd started. Receipts. I added a new line. My silence was never protection, it was permission. Then I wrote 2 names in bold, Deborah, Tamara, and underneath them, a note to myself in bright yellow. "Don't forget." Rhea placed the old phone on the coffee table like it was something sacred or dangerous. "I kept it," she said. "Don't ask why, I think I just knew." I hesitated before picking it up. The casing was chipped, the screen still slightly cracked. I didn't expect much, but when I scrolled through the messages from years ago, my chest began to tighten. The texts were cold, sharp, bluntly final. Things I supposedly wrote to end our friendship, except I hadn't. "Let's stop pretending this friendship is working. You're a distraction I can't afford. You were never good for me." I swallowed hard. "That doesn't sound like you," Rhea said. No, it didn't. Then I opened the Notes app. There it was, a draft. The exact wording from those messages, complete, perfectly phrased, but never sent. The sender? Deborah. My mother. She hadn't just influenced my decisions, she made them for me, silently, strategically. She didn't just want to isolate me, I whispered. She wanted to make sure I had no one left to run to. Rhea didn't respond. She didn't need to. The doorbell buzzed, cutting through the room. I jumped. No one ever visited us without texting first. Rhea opened the door. An envelope had been slipped under it. No name, just the logo of my former employer. I knew before I opened it what I would find. An incident report. Data breach, 6 months ago. Suspicious login from a flagged IP address. My credentials. It didn't make sense, until it did. I grabbed my old call logs. The night before the breach, Tamara had called. Said she was applying for some internship and needed to understand how security systems worked. Said it was just curiosity. I had brushed it off. But now, I remembered Aaron, her ex, worked in IT, used to hang around at our family BBQs. One summer, he offered to upgrade my laptop. I never got that laptop back. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me gutted, professionally, financially, digitally. I opened my laptop and began to reconstruct it all. Every timestamp, every login, every unexplained glitch in my system. I created a folder and labeled it Phase 1 Internal Fraud Evidence. Inside, screenshots from the employer's report, the deleted message draft from Deborah's phone, my insurance cancellation letter, the scholarship forgery. The file grew fast. Then I texted Aaron, "We need to talk. No threats, just truth." Rhea watched me from across the room, her eyes cautious. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I'm awake." She nodded, said nothing. Outside, the sky darkened. The city started its slow humming shift into night. I saved the folder and stared at the title again. If I was the quiet one, they should have made sure I stayed that way. The subject line said, "You need to see this. That's all." I stared at it for a full minute before clicking. My fingers hovered over the mouse, unsure whether I'd be opening another wound or finally sealing one shut. It was from Aaron, Tamara's ex. I hadn't heard from him since a Christmas 5 years ago, when he showed up with an $8 bottle of wine and called me uptight before dinner. Attached was a voice memo. I clicked play. Tamara's voice came through, casual, airy, too airy. "I don't need her to get fired, just shaken. Just enough that she scrambles, that's all." Then a pause, then laughter. "She always lands on her feet. Let's test that." I played it again, then once more. I didn't feel rage, not exactly. It was colder than that, something quieter, a kind of icy understanding that wraps around your spine and stays there. I hit download. That same night, my phone buzzed again. "Ken, can we talk in person?" 20 minutes later, I sat across from him in his cramped office. It smelled like paper and stress. He looked tired, older than I remembered. He slid a folder across the desk without saying a word. Inside was a scanned check, one of the missing ones from the stolen $135K. It had my mother's signature. No fraud, no forgery. Just her name, clean and intentional, written with the kind of flourish you only see on greeting cards and betrayal. "The deposit went to a senior living facility," Ken said. "In Spokane." She said she was thinking ahead, retirement and all. I let the silence hang. It stretched between us like a line of thread waiting to snap. "She wasn't just covering for Tamara," I finally said. "She was cashing out." Ken didn't disagree. When I got back to the apartment, I didn't sit down. I didn't speak. I went straight to the floor, opened my laptop, and began pulling pieces together. I opened 3 folders. One labeled Voice, another Bank, a third Timeline. Screenshots, timestamps, call logs. I built a grid. Every attack, digital, personal, emotional, laid out in cold, silent rows. By the time I backed it all up to 3 flash drives, it was past midnight. I stood, stretched, and walked to the kitchen. Rhea was already there, leaning against the counter, a mug in her hands. "You good?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm building something." "A case?" "No," I said. "A future." I returned to my desk and opened one final folder. I named it Legacy. Because if my mother was planning her exit, her next life far from the one she built on my back, then it was only fair I planned mine, too. The envelope was thick, stiff like bad news, and bore the seal of a law office I recognized too well. It arrived by courier, signed for it myself. I didn't open it right away. Something in me already knew. When I did, the first sentence was clinical, efficient. Effective April 5th, 2024, you are no longer legally affiliated with any Colby Estate holdings. I read it again. I read it a third time. I wasn't just written out, I was erased, like a mistake someone didn't want to admit they'd made. Rhea was in the kitchen, making toast. I held the letter up in the doorway like a white flag. She did it, I said. She actually did it. Rhea grabbed the paper, eyes scanning fast. Are you kidding me? I shook my head. She's not just cutting you off, Rhea muttered. She's rewriting history. I wasn't even surprised, I whispered. I was just waiting for it. She slammed the letter on the counter. Let's go to her house, right now. No, I said. This doesn't deserve a door slam and screaming match. This deserves precision. So I pulled out my laptop. I opened a new folder and titled it, Inheritance Manipulation. Inside, I started dragging in title records, copies of the fake scholarship docs, screenshots of her old emails to me, the ones that read like veiled threats wrapped in flowery language. If you keep making things difficult, don't expect to be included in the future, one of them said. The irony now made me laugh. By sunset, my phone buzzed again. It was Ken. Can we meet tomorrow? Just you and me? His office hadn't changed. Still cluttered. Still smelled like dust and ink. He looked uncomfortable the moment I sat down. I need to say something, he said. I was going to go to the police. With the ledger. I thought it was you. I didn't respond. You were the logical suspect. Everything pointed to you. You had access. You had motive. You got kicked out. It made sense. On paper. Still, I said nothing. He ran a hand over his face. But then, you didn't flinch. You didn't beg. You didn't try to explain. You just acted. That's when I knew I was wrong. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a flash drive. Everything I have is on here. The estate, the assets, the changes she filed. I'm giving it to you. I took it. Thanks, I said. Not because I felt grateful, because he was finally doing the bare minimum. That night, I opened a new case file in my legal doc manager. Subject, Financial Elder Abuse, Code Section RCW 74.34. I reviewed every attachment twice. Then I exported it all into a single PDF. They use paper to erase me. I'll use it to bring them to light. We stepped out of the courthouse into a drizzle that didn't bother pretending it might let up. Ken walked beside me in silence until we reached the curb. Then he stopped. I didn't file it, he said, his voice low enough to get swallowed by the traffic. I turned to look at him. The report, he clarified. I drafted it. Uploaded it into the system. But I never hit send. My jaw clenched. Your restraint, he added, said more than any statement ever could. I didn't respond with gratitude. There was a difference between a man choosing not to destroy me and one who chose to truly see me. But I nodded. That was all he'd get. That was all I had left for people like him. That night, I sat at my laptop while Rhea cooked dinner behind me, something with garlic and rosemary. The kitchen smelled safe. My finger hovered over the button. The post was titled, When Your Family Steals Your Future. I clicked Publish. Then I sat back. It took 30 hours to go viral. I expected silence. Instead, the internet screamed. Women from Idaho to Alabama flooded the comments. This happened to me. You just described my childhood. Thank you for saying it so clearly. By morning, a podcast had messaged me. By noon, a local news station sent a request for an on-air interview. I didn't accept. I didn't need a camera to tell the truth. Deborah's church group released a statement. We are aware of accusations circulating and are reviewing our affiliation. That was their way of saying, we're not backing her anymore. Tamara's name trended locally. Her LinkedIn account was deactivated by evening. A former coworker of mine, someone who had once forwarded my emails to HR for tone, left a comment. She was the one holding things together. I wish we'd seen it sooner. I didn't cry, not out of strength, just clarity. This wasn't vindication, this was exposure. Sunlight on mold. By midnight, I turned my phone off, not to hide, to rest. In the morning, I opened a new folder. I labeled it Phase 2 Civil Action. Inside, I placed every file I had, the bank records, the altered title, the forged signature overlays. I looked at the screen, then I leaned back, watching the cursor blink like it was daring me to blink back. They told the world I was disposable, I said out loud. But now the world gets to decide who really is. It came on a Sunday morning, slipped under my apartment door with no knock, no footsteps, just there, like guilt or grace. I stared at it for a while. No return address, no stamp, just my name in slanted handwriting that didn't try to disguise its hesitancy. I opened it carefully, as if it might bruise. 6 sentences, no signature. You didn't deserve what they did. I believed them. I believed everything they said about you. And now I feel ashamed. You were never the problem. I hope you never come back. I read it once, then again. It wasn't apology. It wasn't absolution. It was truth. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to argue with it. I placed the letter on the table and poured myself coffee I wouldn't drink. The window by the sink fogged with morning light and condensation. It reminded me of that first night I left home. Wet hair, a bag slung over one shoulder, the weight of unspoken things pressed against my chest like soaked cotton. Back then, I thought I wanted justice. Now I realize what I wanted was peace. Turns out, they're not the same thing. Deborah never called again. Tamara's hearing was postponed indefinitely, but no one from my family reached out, not even to deny what I'd made public. And that was the point, wasn't it? They erased me quietly. So I rebuilt myself loudly. The ledger had taken on a life of its own. Emails rolled in daily, some angry, some broken, some whispering things they'd never said aloud before. I walked away because of you. My daughter read your article and said, "She sounds like you, Mom." You gave language to the ache I couldn't name. 2 shelters had reached out to collaborate. A legal clinic in Seattle asked to use our framework. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about roadmaps. I folded the letter and placed it in the back of my drawer, not to forget it, but to mark it. A page, not the ending. Then I stepped out onto the balcony. The sky was heavy but undecided. The air smelled like rain, but no drops had fallen yet. One of those in-between mornings, like the story wasn't finished, but had stopped needing permission to move forward. I stood there longer than I meant to, watching the city stretch into itself, quiet and awake. Maybe healing isn't about what I receive. Maybe it's about what I refuse to carry forward. There's something sobering about rebuilding your life from ashes you didn't set yourself on fire with. If I've learned anything, it's that silence doesn't equal peace. And sometimes, the hardest thing you'll ever do is choose yourself over the version of you your family expects to keep around. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the easy one, the responsible one, the one they count on but never protect, then maybe you already know the cost of being useful. Walk away if you must. You're allowed to. Healing doesn't always come with a reunion. Sometimes it comes with a new start, built by your own hands. Let me ask you, have you ever kept quiet just to keep the peace? Was it worth it? If this story touched something inside you, drop a comment below with a 1, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate with you, I still want to know why. Your voice matters here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There are more stories coming, real ones. Stories about strength, survival, and starting over. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't shouting back, it's finally being heard.